Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. The Bible is replete with stories of men and women of great faith doing things and moving and acting after God told them to, even though there was no evidence in the real world in front of them that it made any sense at all. Noah, Abraham, Rahab, so many stories of people operating with no carnal evidence that what they're doing could lead to anything good. But what do we know of all those stories? God had a plan. It became very apparent to me over a year ago that spiritually, Florida was very, very different than the rest of this continent. Something was different down here, and I began counseling people, if you can get to Florida, you need to come to Florida. And I got a lot of pushback. Many people said, well, when the governor does this, or when this changes, or when that changes, or if this happens, then I'll think about it. See, that's the exact antithesis of faith. Waiting for things to make sense to your eyes before acting. The Patriot Nurse, and I know I speak about this a lot, but this is the only other personality on YouTube that I have ever heard say, operate in faith. Even if it doesn't make sense to you right now, operate in faith and let God move. Operate in faith and let God move and be in charge of the outcome and create a situation that you couldn't have conceived of. All of those people and stories in the Bible, that's the message. Even when the Israelites left Egypt, they couldn't have conceived of the waters being parted. They couldn't have conceived of manna. But still, so many say, well, the governor's done some good things, but he's not going to be able to stand up to this big corporation or that big corporation. Really? Really? This is a screenshot from his most recent event in Brandon, Florida, where in our special session, our legislature passed laws prohibiting a great many things and righting a great many wrongs. But still, so many say, well, just you wait, Florida Maki. Disney's not going to comply. Those big schools... This is what I get all the time. 19 November 2021. Disney World hits pause button over COVID-19 vaccination policies. Yes, that's right. Disney World has come into compliance. So many said that Disney money would do whatever they wanted to do. Well, guess what? Disney is pausing the enforcement of its COVID-19 vaccine mandate in Florida in response to the state's enactment of a law placing several restrictions and requirements on companies that mandate vaccines for employees. Quote, as we assess the full impact of this new legislation, we are immediately pausing the enforcement of our mandatory vaccination policy for Florida-based cast members and employees until further notice. They've even stopped going through the evaluation process. Think it's only them? They've actually begun rehiring people, as has Ascension Health, a huge operator of hospitals. 19 November 2021, Tom Van Osdal, President and CEO, Ascension Florida and Gulf Coast. Yesterday, the governor of Florida signed into effect Florida law HB 1B. HB 1B conflicts with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Omnibus COVID-19 Healthcare Staff Vaccination Interim Final Rule dated 4 November 2021. In order to be compliant with federal and state law, Ascension Florida will be rescinding the suspensions of associates who were suspended pending their compliance with Ascension Florida vaccine policy. It continues. Broward has lifted its mask mandates. And it goes on and on. Alachua drops its mask mandates. See, when you fight back and you have God on your side and you do what God says and you are faithful, He will intervene. There is no comparison between Florida and any other state in the Union, which is why I've referred to us as our own republic. It is that different. It is that radically different. There are states that have followed our model, but make no mistake, we are the leading edge into that wilderness where we were commanded to go. The governor walked into a wilderness on his own. This particular image you're looking at was from the shul this past summer, where he signed a law into being that restored prayer in public schools in Florida. Many people didn't pay much attention to it back then, and it was only a week later that the Islamists took out Surfside. It was only a week later after that this occurred. So if you don't think there's spiritual warfare going on, think again. Think again. And if you're going to wait for there to be concrete, absolute, perfect evidence that everything's fine, it's going to be too late. I'm going to tell you right now, that door is going to close. It's going to close, and God's going to close this ark. He's going to lift up that door, just like He did with Noah. And those that are inside will be saved and will be protected. But outside, there will be no help. And it will be because you've waited. You've waited for the governor to do this. You've waited for the legislature to do that. Or this other situation, but there's no guarantee of this and there's no guarantee of that. You're right. There aren't guarantees in life. If there were, there would be no need for faith. Acts 2:17 and 18. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. It doesn't say that they'll have the ability to prophesy. It says they will. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. In those days I will pour out my Spirit even on my servants, men and women alike, and they will prophesy. This is the only other person on this entire platform that I have heard say, move, go and do in faith without evidence. Without carnal evidence before your eyes. Go and do. Act. Stand in faith. Hold to your principles. Do the thing that doesn't make sense. And we already now have these big hospitals and schools and Disney kowtowing and backing down and rehiring people all across the state. Those were just a few that we could get the actual documentation for prior to the weekend. Wait until next week, when these companies finally realize they don't stand a chance and who they're really up against. This is spiritual warfare. The Bible tells of a great test of faith. Later on in Hebrews, I believe in the 6th verse, it says that it is impossible to please God without faith. And faith requires you to do things and act in the real world without evidence, without carnal proof. That's what faith is. It's not just going to church. It's not just living a holy life or, dressing head to toe all the time or reading your Bible. Faith is you doing things in the real world that argue with reality when told to do so. And it's scary. But I think the evidence now has started to mount that many can look in the mirror and say, wow, I have not been operating in faith, have I? I've been operating in fear. I've been waiting for the world to give me a sign. I've been waiting for the government to give me a sign. And that's kind of what this platform has been notorious for. And that's probably why the only other person speaking of this is Patriot Nurse, because it's exactly the opposite of what this platform's about. It's literally the anti-faith, but we will leave it there. God bless, like, share, subscribe. Have a happy weekend, and we will see you next time.